I didn't go to Albuquerque High School. I didn't stay to go to high school here. What happened to me was when I was a sixth grader, a cousin of mine, his parents had gotten divorced, and in those days divorce was unusual in the community. They'd gotten divorced and he was an only child, and he didn't want to live with either parent. Actually, he moved in with us, with us for the whole summer. He didn't want to live with either parent. He was very angry about his parents being divorced. Somebody suggested El Rito, no, but my parents I don't think had ever heard of El Rito. So they registered him. El Rito was a boarding school, which originally had started out as it was one of the constitutional schools, like the University of New Mexico is one of the constitutional schools. It was created in 1909 while we were still a territory, and the purpose of it was called the Spanish American Normal School. That was its original name. It still is the name in the Constitution, even though today it's called Northern New Mexico College. Its name in the Constitution is the Spanish American Normal School. Normal schools, of course, were created in this country for the purpose of training teachers. And in those years, teachers were trained in 2 years. They got a 2-year degree to teach in the public schools, and then would continue taking classes until they got bachelor's degree.
So as a normal school, was it a high school or was it high school college?
It was high school college, because there was hardly anybody in northern New Mexico. It was created primarily for northern New Mexico, but people came from around the state, mostly from northern New Mexico, but came from around the state and southern Colorado to attend the school there. And it was co-ed. And anyway, going back to my cousin, my parents weren't sure whether they wanted me to go there, but I went up that weekend when we took my cousin to the school. I went up with his mother, one of my uncles, and some other folks to take my cousin to El Rito, and he was very happy with the arrangement because he wasn't going to have to live with either parent. And I really like the campus. It's a beautiful little campus. It's still a very, very inspiring little campus. And so I asked my parents if I could go. And they said, okay. So the following week, I dropped out of Longfellow, and because I was already registered in Longfellow for my 6th grade year, and went up to El Rito. A month later, we had an epidemic. It was called typhoid. The water system, they had very primitive water system. Got the water from the river, and they supposedly treated the water, and about a third of the student body caught typhoid. 3 students died from the. So this happened in October. So I was at El Rito for about a month and a half before I got sick. My parents didn't let me go back. I came home, all of us came home, not all of us, but the ones that got sick rather, and we were under quarantine for the rest of the school year. I couldn't leave my house, I couldn't go to school, and they didn't have what they call home teachers in those years, so you just stayed home and people would bring you books. So I probably read more books for pleasure than any other time in my life when I was in the 6th grade. And so my parents did not let me go back to El Rito after that until I was a sophomore in high school. So I started at Albuquerque High. In those years, we only had 2 public high schools. That was Albuquerque High and Highland, which had been around about 2 or 3 years already. So then, but they were building Valley, and Valley was going to be opening up the following year. So at Albuquerque High, we had about 50 students per class. I mean, I remember in one of my classes where I was sitting, the classroom was built for 30 students, and we didn't have enough chairs or textbooks. So my parents became convinced this wasn't a good idea. And my cousin would come, when he'd come home on weekends or vacations, that's all he would talk about was El Rito, and he would stay with us a part of the time. And so my parents let me go back. And I went back and graduated from.
Did it cost anything?
Yes. They had a varying way of paying. The kids from up north, I'm telling you, this probably wouldn't happen today, but the kids from up north, whose parents were ranchers and farmers, would pay their tuition with sheep and cattle, with meat and mutton. I remember there were 3 girls that were from a little town called Vallecitos, and I remember one night their dad drove up the truck, and I don't know how I wound up, but I was helping them hang lamb or sheep, mutton, and these things they'll get weight about maybe 60 pounds, and I remember not knowing the technique of how to hang them up on, and they'll say, oh, you can tell these city boys, they can't even pick up a little 50, 60 pound carcass and hang it, I didn't know how to do that. They made fun of me because I didn't know how to do that. But that was, and the tuition, students, you had a different rates. You had a rate of what they call full-time students, or students that parents paid the whole tuition. And I can't remember what the amount was, but it wasn't very much, maybe $45 a month or something like that. And there was I don't remember too many students whose parents paid that much money. Then there was another group of students, who were half-time students, and the half-time students worked to pay part of their tuition. All of us, so I remember that was probably true of almost all the students. All of us had jobs in the school. You walked on that campus. I was in the military for a lot of years, and I've never seen a military camp that looked as neat and as well organized as El Rito used to look when we were students, because we were supervised by a couple of maintenance people and to make sure we got all our jobs done. My sophomore year, I had the job of firing a boiler. Now, firing a boiler means that you keep that boiler was about the size of, I would say about a third of this room. You open it, and you had to throw in the coal in there, and you had to keep that thing. You fired that thing at least 3 times a day. You go under and you shovel the coal. You and another guy, there would be 2 of you doing that. And then on Saturdays we'd have to clean it. And cleaning a coal burning boiler is no fun, because it's very dirty. But we go in there with wheelbarrows and take the clinkers. Coal doesn't burn into fine ash when it's real hot. It forms these, we call them clinkers. It's kind of like rock, like a lava material, real rough. And you pile that and then you'd have to pick it up the chute and pile it outside. We had 1, 2, 3 buildings that were fired, and there were other students that were doing. Myself and this other fellow were responsible. But the work was mostly during the coldest part of the year. The rest of the time we just the hot water part we kept going. But that was the job I had for a year, and other people swept. We would sweep all the sidewalks, clear the snow, whatever was involved. Weekends we'd clean the whole campus, rake the leaves, The girls in the girls' dorm, they would mostly worked in the cafeteria, polish the floors, clean tables, wait on tables, all that stuff for half of their tuition. So just about everybody had a job. So we all learned to do things that, you know, we didn't learn at home. We had several kids, boys, that had spent their first 12 years of their life, until they were about teenagers, as orphans at what's the name of the, we used to have an orphanage here, St. Anthony's Orphanage here in Albuquerque. Doesn't exist anymore, but and then the state would pay half their tuition, had some kind of arrangement too. So we had a number of students that were orphans that went to school there. The interesting thing is, I can't think of anybody that I went to high school at El Rito or went to school at El Rito that didn't succeed, didn't by any standard, did very well in with whatever career or whatever profession they chose. You know, they all did pretty well for themselves. The ones that got degrees, the ones that didn't get degrees made more money than the ones that got degrees.